to take a reminder back, why do we want to emphasize mom's milk? There's multiple studies coming out that emphasize the point that there's a dose-related response. This is one of the first that was published in 2009. It was a network study, and first author was Minson Deer. And basically it showed that for babies over 1,200 infants, 500 to 1,000 grams birth weight, there was a dose-related response to mom's milk. So the more mother's milk babies received in the first 2 weeks of life, the less chance they had for NEC or death. And so it reminds us that there's a dose-related response. So going to donor human milk, in this, we started using donor human milk at Texas Children's in 2009, as well as an exclusive human milk-based diet. And I think back then there were 3 or 4 milk banks across the country, Hembana milk banks, and now there are many different ways you can get pasteurized donor human milk for infants. So there's national and regional organizations of milk banks, and the majority of the programs, there's extensive screening for donors. And so they pool donated milk from qualified donors, and depending on which milk bank, so some milk banks only pull it from a few donor moms, some it's from 1,000. And they screen for infectious agents, bacterial contamination. The method of pasteurization uses Holder pasteurization. And so the current different banks are listed here. And as I mentioned, the Human Milk Banking Association of North America, there's now, I believe, 27. It changes frequently on the website. There's also a company called Metalac that partners with Mother's Milk Cooperative, and they have a different type of donor milk that is in a pouch, and it has a shelf life of a few years. Prolacta Bioscience also produces donor milk. They use a unique process where they reblend the milk to ensure it's 20 calories per ounce. There are various hospital-based milk banks. I know this is supposed to be NICU. That is a new milk bank. I know I've seen their website, but I don't know much more than that. And I heard there's a recent donor milk bank called Ambrosia Milk. But again, these are popping up on various websites. So why am I talking about donor milk or human milk and premature babies? So a lot of this is focused around necrotizing enterocolitis. This is still one of the most devastating diseases for our preterm infants. It causes the most number of premature deaths. And we still, despite 35 years of research, don't know the exact, we know it's a combination of factors, as you can see in this slide, but there's not a way to prevent it other than such things as using breast milk and donor human milk, as well as an all-human milk diet. So here's NEC. We know prematurity is a risk factor, gut changes and blood perfusion to the gut, so gut ischemia. Enteral feeds, depending on what you feed in the gut, can put you at risk. And then bacterial colonization, there's a lot of data coming out about the microbiome and that babies that develop NEC have more of a dysbiosis. And then the inflammatory response in premature babies is often exaggerated. And this is a depiction from Dr. New's paper in 2011 in the New England Journal of Medicine, basically just showing that this is the intestine, these are the intestinal cells, and these are some of the immune factors, such as IgA, toll-like receptors. And what happens with NEC is that you get this altered microbiome, and then you have all these risk factors. Premature babies have leaky gut, so bacteria that are supposed to stay inside the gut come through, and then the body has this exaggerated immune response, and then you get intestinal necrosis. And so you saw this slide before, but I bring it up to show that a lot of these different factors in human milk are floating through this intestine here and have immune functions that can at least lessen or potentially prevent NEC. So to recap, I've talked essentially I've talked about Lacto-Engineering. So this is the innovation piece. What's on the horizon, and it's very incredible what I think has been done already and what will happen in the future. So essentially taking components of human milk that we know that are important and studying them and figuring out ways to further help premature infants. So first of all, the donor human milk derived fortifier, which I'll talk about later, but this is essentially pasteurized donor human milk that then is concentrated and made into a fortifier for premature babies. There's a product which I'll talk about called human milk cream, and that's essentially donor milk fat. So how can you use a component such as concentrated donor milk fatty acids to help babies? There are human milk oligosaccharides, and I think our research in this is just starting, but we will, I know, hear more about this in the future. I talked to you about the human milk fat globule and the importance of that. And then taking it a step further, looking at milk analyzers, and we'll talk about that. But basically, there are 3 machines on the market right now, and they're really meant for research purposes. But how can we kind of take that and make it into a user-friendly, so most units can have it, so that we can do targeted fortification or individual fortification. So basically taking the components of mom's milk, the macronutrients, and then altering them, raising them so that we can achieve the growth that we want. And then the ability that some of the donor milk banks have to reblend the donor milk to make it 20 calories. So how can we alter the donor milk we're providing so that it gives the best nutrition, appropriate protein to our preterm infants?